You know what? There is not a huge law enforcement presence where we are. There is a huge community presence. People are angry, Anderson. I spoke to a number of people, including a set of 3 daughters whose father had been deported to Mexico back in 2018. They described that they themselves wanted to come because they were so taken with somebody who they believed was simply trying to stand up for their own rights and did not want to navigate the system alone. Others are shouting profanities about ICE. Others are very angry about what has happened and frustrated, saying no ICE here, not in our city. Here we are a few blocks away from where George Floyd was killed. We are now about a mile or so from downtown Minneapolis. People are angry. The temperatures are frustrated. It is peaceful, and not in terms of the sound and the loudness, but they are angry and want their views to be heard. I will also note, about 10 minutes ago, there was a big tuba that was playing This Little Light of Mine, and the crowd broke out in song, familiarly speaking about and singing about that really poignant moment.
Laura Coates, thanks very much. Laura's going to be anchoring live from Minneapolis at 11 p.m. Eastern. Joining me right now is former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig, former Secret Service agent Jonathan Wackrow, and former NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism John Miller. And I want to put those videos back up because, I mean, this is what it boils down to in terms of how people see this. What do you guys see from a law enforcement perspective, particularly this video of the officer who shot, from the second vantage point that we have seen, the contact he made with the vehicle?
So in one sense, the officer places himself in front of that vehicle, which creates a situation where this is almost bound to happen. The car starts to move forward. You're going to perceive that as a threat. And the second thing you see is he opens fire. He fires, at least what we get from the audio, is 3 shots. And that is basically against DHS policy, which is policy states you're not supposed to shoot at a moving vehicle.
You're not supposed to. No.
Right. And the idea is that it is inherently dangerous and usually ineffective. The policy says if you are forced to shoot at a moving vehicle, you should also consider what happens when you shoot the driver of a vehicle that's speeding, which we see here. It goes out of control and crashes, and what is the danger to others? So one of the things there is, from a tactical standpoint, was this a smart way to operate? One of the fascinating things we learned from the Secretary of Homeland Security today was that the agent who fires the shots in June had been rammed by another vehicle, Secretary Noem claims.
But this is what she says.
That's right, and dragged for 50 yards.
I mean, there's no body camera.
We haven't isolated what incident that was or where it was, and we are aware from past descriptions of encounters with people in vehicles in ICE that they have a tendency at DHS, at least on the headquarters level, to exaggerate the occurrence. So this raises a number of questions, and the investigations here are going to be, from the FBI and DHS. Was it tactically bad to create this situation? Was it within policy as a shooting for the deadly force policy? And then there's the legal part, which was it criminal?
Jonathan, I mean, again, we're playing this video because I do think this is a really crucial moment. Obviously, some people will look at this and say, well, look, she was trying to hit him. Others will say, well, look, he could have backed up 2 more steps back.
It's important to note that before he makes contact with the car, if that's what we see in this video, he's already fired.
I'm not sure when the first shot. You think that is?
I've looked at it a number of times.
So he's already fired when he's made contact with the vehicle.
Yes.
It seems like he puts a hand on the vehicle.
So he puts his non-shooting hand down, and basically he bounces himself off of it. But when we look at this video, we have to look at it through 2 lenses. One is the legal lens, and Ellie and I talked about this earlier, which is this a justifiable shoot under the law? And there are certain circumstances there. And then there's the judgment call of the officer on the scene. Could he have gotten out of the way? Now, your point of he has already been struck by a vehicle in previous operations. Allegedly. Then he should know from a tactical standpoint, I am going to get off center. I am not going to be in front of this car. But Anderson, let me just give you my perspective. I have been that officer. I actually have been in the exact same situation, but I did not shoot. Early 2000s, Astoria Boulevard, outside the Neptune Diner, we were making an arrest. I found myself in that exact same position. My weapon was drawn. It was pointed at the driver. We knew that at that point in time, there were weapons in the car. And any type of furtive movement would have made me pull that trigger. The reason I didn't is because when I looked behind, there were people walking along the sidewalk. I knew that if I shot that driver, he was going to veer off most likely to the left into, there was a Dunkin' Donuts right across, you know exactly where I'm talking about. The judgment call that you have to make, that any officer or agent has to make, is milliseconds. In my case, I did not take the shot. In this case, they did. Decisions have consequences. 3 shots.
Can I just follow up with you, Jonathan? Yeah. If there were no bystanders, would you have fired that shot?
Most likely, yeah.
Okay.
But the totality of the circumstances was, and that's the way you have to look at this both from the legal standpoint and from a judgment standpoint.
I just want to play the video with sound just to the question, John, you raised about when.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Tonight, thousands of people have gathered in the streets of Minneapolis and other places around the country in protest. A 37-year-old American citizen, the mother of a young child, is dead tonight. She was shot in the face by an agent of the federal government, and that government has spent the day telling despicable lies about her. The highest officials in the land slandering the victim as a domestic terrorist, running cover for their agents' actions before the earliest details were even available. Her name, identified by the Star Tribune, is Renee Nicole Good. She was the driver of a vehicle in an area where ICE was conducting operations as part of a surge of enforcement ordered by Donald Trump. The government wants you to believe this 37-year-old mother of a young child conducted a ramming attack against the agents, but by now you have probably seen the extremely disturbing video that shows what really happened. We don't know exactly what happened right before that video. We don't have video before that. We do know what happened after. Photos of the aftermath show an incredibly disturbing scene, including this photo of a bloody airbag right next to the stuffed animals in the glove compartment. This is what our government is calling a domestic terrorist. One witness said that a doctor on the scene immediately attempted to help that woman, but ICE blocked him. The Trump administration has responded how they almost always respond in situations like this, by lying. In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said that a, quote, violent rioter, quote, weaponized her vehicle attempting to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them, an act of domestic terrorism. An ICE officer fearing for his life, the lives of his fellow law enforcement, and the safety of the public fired defensive shots, adding, quote, the ICE officers who were hurt are expected to make full recoveries. Donald Trump took things a step further, saying the deceased woman, quote, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it's hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. Well, you just watched the attached clip. You just watched the video.
ICE-related shooting. This now, the first time that we're really hearing some more details from law enforcement.
Yeah, we know that the call was made maybe about 10 o'clock this morning, so just about 3 hours or so ago. In that press conference, we did get some more information about this woman who...
ICE-related shooting. This now, the first time that we're really hearing some more details from law enforcement.
A woman in Minneapolis is dead after an ICE-involved shooting. These are live pictures from Minneapolis. There are videos, as we speak, going around social media showing what happened earlier today between protesters and ICE. We're working on bringing you those videos. You can see one of them on your screen as we speak. Basically, here's what it describes. It shows agents in a truck pulling up to a car that appears to be blocking the road. The two agents get out. They walk up to the driver's side of the car. From there, things escalate quickly. One agent touches the car, and the driver starts driving backwards with the agent's hand still on the car. The driver then hits the gas while another agent appears to be standing in front of the vehicle. That agent, more in front of the car, appears to open fire as the car barrels towards him. DHS telling Fox News the officer who fired the shots had been dragged by a car last June in Minneapolis. We've since learned the driver of the car who was shot was a 37-year-old woman. She was killed. President Trump has weighed in just the last 30 minutes. He wrote, "I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. It is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is being studied in its entirety. But the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They are just trying to do the job of making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate." Now, not long after the incident, just a few hours ago, we saw chaos already beginning between law enforcement and rioters on the streets of Minneapolis. Watch.
Kill someone else! Don't get killed for this thing.
In Minneapolis, according to the Department of Homeland Security, a woman attempted to weaponize her vehicle, that's a quote, ram an agent, run over an agent. The department's called it an act of domestic terrorism. Open fire, that woman is dead this evening. Many Americans are watching videos of this incident online, and they're seeing something different than what the department is describing. I'd like to show you one of those videos so you can talk directly to Americans tonight about what they're seeing. Just tell me what you see when you see this. There's the shot. The vehicle veers off, hits a pole or a barrier of some sort, and the woman's dead. When you see that, some Americans respond with, "This was not justified, this was not necessary." Tell them, this is really about them. What do you see when you see this video?
Well, look, I just got off an airplane. There's 100 different videos out there, and there may be body cam video. I'm not going to comment on that. This is an ongoing investigation. But I think it's reckless, what I'm seeing on social media. I've seen at least 7 or 8 members of Congress make the comment that ICE just murdered somebody. Murdered, right? Now, I said back in March, and I'm on numerous programs, when the rhetoric started escalating back in late March, I said, if this rhetoric continues, there will be bloodshed. I've seen this movie before. I've done this for over 40 years. And sadly, I was right. There has been bloodshed. There's been attacks on ICE officers, there have been people killed, even our detainees were killed here in Dallas.
Yeah.
The investigation's ongoing. There's a lot of video, a lot of evidence hasn't been seen yet. I'm not a forensics expert. and neither are the people and members of Congress commenting on this. They all just hold their judgment. Take a deep breath, hold their judgment, because I think the comments about murder is going to incite what? More violence, more threats, and hopefully not more bloodshed.
And I want to get into that. I want to get into the increase in violence and threats against ICE officers, but I also want to linger for a moment on this incident because it's a really important one. I think the city of Minneapolis is on edge. I think the country is on edge right now. You say the investigation is ongoing.
The investigation just started.
Just started. You say you can't comment on the video, which many Americans are seeing and reacting to.
I'm not going to make a judgment call on one video when there's 100 videos out there. I wasn't on the scene. I'm not an officer that may have body cam video. It'd be unprofessional to comment on what I think happened in that situation. Let the investigation play out and hold people accountable based on the investigation.
I think many members of the public are calling for the same thing, and so they're confused. Maybe you can help me understand how the Department of Homeland Security could conclude so swiftly that this is a, quote, act of domestic terrorism, that this woman, quote, weaponized her vehicle. By the very same standard you described, this investigation is just getting started.
That's the question for Homeland Security. I'm the border czar. Well, I can tell you what I've seen on my airplane ride here, looking at numerous videos, seeing numerous social media posts, statements from the Homeland Security, statements from Secretary Noem. I'll leave it at that.
But as a law enforcement officer,
what good is it to do right now to me prejudge the facts of what happened today without giving law enforcement professionals, whether it's the FBI or the local police there, give them time to look at all the videos, talk to all the witnesses, talk to the officers, and make an educated decision on what occurred today. That's what needs to happen. I've been a cop since 1984. That is the process we must go through.
The reason I ask you about actions in the interior of the country, even though your title is border czar, is when you were announced, in that announcement, Donald Trump said you would be responsible for all deportations of illegal aliens. So that's the mission there in Minneapolis,
that's
right?
That's one of my missions, yes.
Yeah, so this is an incident under your purview.
A tragedy happened today. Sad tragedy. You know, every night when I go to bed, and I've said this 100 times on other interviews, I pray for the safety of the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol. I also pray that nobody dies, including the people we're looking for.
And now,
I don't want to see anybody die.
And now 5 people have died in incidents, 4 immigrants, and now a woman who we don't know what she was doing. Perhaps she was intending harm, perhaps she was a protester, we don't know.
Well, let's not forget, ICE agents been shot at too.
Yes.
ICE agents been injured. Assaults against ICE agents over 1,300%. I mean, and I will say it again, I've said it 1,000 times. I blame a lot of this on the hateful rhetoric of mayors and governors and some in Congress who, you know, they want to compare ICE to the Nazis and the racists and the Gestapo. ICE is enforcing laws they enacted. ICE isn't making this up. So if a member of Congress saying, ICE, you're enforcing laws we enacted, you're a racist. They wrote the law.
In the spirit of fairness now, I mean, there are people who are angry at ICE because they hear from this administration, members of it, Stephen Miller, sometimes the president himself, what they consider to be racist, inflammatory language against immigrants, against migrants, both illegal and not. Is there not a double standard here?
What racial rhetoric are you talking about from the administration?
I'm not going to litigate comment by comment here. So I'm just saying.
I don't see any racial. You know, right away, you know, the left wants to pull that, the race card. It has to be racist. ICE isn't doing anything different. They did it for decades. The problem is, the last 4 years, ICE wasn't able to do the job. ICE is out, and the data proves it, even though a lot of the media don't want to talk about accurate data. Nearly 70%, I think it's like 68-point-something% of everybody ICE arrested is a criminal.
Sorry, what percentage?
Just below 70%. I think it's 68.7.
Is a criminal, has a criminal record.
Is a convicted criminal pending criminal charges.
Right, so 30% are not. And so part of the reason.
And who is that 30%? 30%? A lot more national security cases who don't have a criminal history because their whole game is to lay low until they do the dirty deed. A lot more final orders. These are people who had due process at great taxpayer expense, were ordered removed by a federal judge and didn't leave.
Yeah.
We're looking for them. The message we can't send to the rest of the world is enter the country legally. It's a crime, don't worry about it. Have due process, show up in court or don't show up in court, get a final order, don't worry about it. If that's the message we send to the whole world, you're never going to fix this problem. What the bottom line is this. President Trump has illegal immigration down 96%, which means 96% less people are now coming, which means less women are being sexually assaulted by members of the cartel, less children and the most vulnerable are dying making that journey, less fentanyl is getting into the country to kill Americans. Sex trafficking of women and children have declined increasingly. So secure borders saving lives. The message we're going to send to the whole world is that there are consequences of violating laws. One of the reasons we have the most secure border in the history of this nation is not only because of men and women of Border Patrol is doing what
Mr. Holman, I've been down there.
Doing. But a lot of the reasons we have the most secure border in history of this nation is because ICE operations. They're sending a clear message. There are consequences for violating our laws.
I want to get back to the mission, your effort to make it effective, and the question of safety. Given the situation now in Minneapolis, the level of public anger, the videos that when many Americans see them, they see either unnecessary violence or they see excessive force. Do you believe that this mission in Minneapolis and nationwide can still be carried out in a way that is effective for you, but at the very same time, safe for everyone else?
Yes. And we're going to continue the mission.
The mayor of Minneapolis...
You can protest all you want. You have that right. But you can't impede. You can't interfere. You certainly can't assault ICE officers or threaten to assault them. So we're going to continue this mission.
These videos that for months and months have been going around that people watch and they share and they say, look at this case of excessive force. Again, I'm not going to litigate any particular incident or ask you in detail about it, but I'm curious, you've seen these videos. I'm sure you've seen more than is even public. Have you seen any examples of clear excessive force displayed by ICE agents and officers in the field?
No.
During the whole administration?
Things that I've seen?
Yeah.
No. And when I hear things, I see a story that an allegation is made, I follow up, make sure that it's being fully investigated. But I haven't seen one ICE officer found guilty of anything inappropriate. Look, I'm not involved in every arrest. I reckon thousands of arrests a day, over 2,000 a day on average. I can't be aware of every ICE arrest. I trust the men and women of ICE and the Border Patrol are well trained. They get Fourth Amendment training every 6 months. I'm putting my faith in them that they do the right thing every day out there. And if they don't, they'll be held accountable.
So help me understand then, what is your explanation for, if you say all the cases you've ever seen, all the videos that you've ever had pop up on your social media, all this stuff, you've never seen an example of excessive force. What in your mind explains the public anger and frustration with ICE and some of its tactics? We've seen it in polling, you see it in the streets. What's your explanation for it?
I think a lot is based on false media reporting. I think it's the hateful rhetoric being pushed by mayors, governors, and members of Congress. Like, for instance, I read a story last night that a majority of people ICE arrest, matter of fact, less than 10% of people ICE arrest are criminals. Really? I look at the data every morning. I read 22 pages of data. I see exactly what's going on. So when the people are looking at social media posts and media posts that are simply not factual at all, not even close, they get a judgment, right? They read something, okay, this is happening. Well, it's not happening. 70%. I mean, Washington Examiner just came out. They looked at all the data. I look at the data every day. A lot of people are being misled. And I think a lot of videos out there, what happened 30 seconds before that video? What happened 30 seconds after that video?
So now you are commenting on the video. These are questions
when
that you
I see videos, you just ask me if I see them being inappropriate.
Yeah.
No. But you don't know what happened 30 days, either do I.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to comment on something I don't see, but as what I've seen and through my reviews, I haven't seen ICE officers act inappropriately.
So as a former...
We're going to enforce the laws, and we're going to do it without apology.
So as
and if you get in the way, you step over the line, you're going to be prosecuted. you will be arrested. That's what I see every day. I see impediment. I see interference. I see ICE officers and Border Patrol agents being attacked.
So that video I showed you, it's conceivable in your mind, based on your training, based on your role as former acting director of ICE, that officer may well have been acting in self-defense. That's your view of this?
I'm not going to comment on this ongoing investigation that just started. Let the investigators do their job.
The governor of Minnesota has described the federal presence there, the ICE presence, as like an attack, like an invasion. The mayor says it's causing chaos in the streets. He says, quote, "Get the F out of Minneapolis." Assuming that you're not going to do that.
First of all, he's causing chaos on the street. You want less ICE agents in the street? Then let us in the jail. They're sanctuary city. Let us arrest that public safety threat that you decided to lock in a jail cell. You made that decision. Let ICE officers tuck that person. Because when you get fingerprinted, or you get arrested tonight, you, me, or anybody else, you get fingerprinted, your prints are run against NCIC. They're also run against DHS databases. So we know this person sitting in that jail right now that we have a warrant for, or is a prior deport. Give us access to that person. When you're done with them, let us have them. That way, safer for the public, because you're not releasing public safety threats back into the public. It's safer for the officer, and it's safer for the alien. Let us in the jail. So, I've said it 1,000 times ever since this, I've been doing this job.
Hey, listen, I understand. We got EMS coming. I get it. Just give us a second. We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relax? You just killed my neighbor. You caught butter in the face. You killed my neighbor. How do you show up to work every day? How the do you do this every day? You're killing my neighbors. You're stealing my neighbors. What the man?
Emily Heller is out front now, who you heard there and filmed that in that horrifically traumatic moment. So, Emily, I know you live there. This is your street. This is your home. And you're inside your house. You hear all of this commotion. Everything is starting to happen. Okay, can you tell me what happened then? You hear everything. You come outside, and then what?
I hadn't even gotten dressed. I was making breakfast. I went out, I heard the commotion, I heard whistles, which is the common sign of ICE is nearby, and I went out onto my front porch. I didn't even have shoes on, and within 60 seconds, everything had already gone down. But there was an ICE convoy that seemed to be stuck, and then there was a protester who was blocking traffic, so they couldn't progress. And she was totally peaceful, and ICE, it seemed, completely unorganized. They didn't really know what they were doing. They were screaming at her to move, move, move. And then they approached her vehicle aggressively and tried to open her door. And then that's when she got spooked, and she reversed her vehicle to turn her wheels to try to escape. And that's when an ICE agent stepped in front of her vehicle and said, "Stop." And then, she was already moving, and then point blank shot her through her windshield in the face.
I can't imagine what it was to see that, Emily. The way that you are laying this out, though, I just want to repeat and make sure that I'm clear, and please correct me if I say anything wrong. You're saying that what you saw was disorganized ICE, but then when they tried to get her to stop, she got spooked. She reversed her car to turn her wheels to get away, and that was when the officer stepped in front.
They were telling her to leave. They were telling her to move, and then all of a sudden seemed like they were trying to get her. So they were telling her to move, and then in a split second they were saying they were trying to get her out of the car. So it was like she was trying to move. Once they were trying to get in her car, she was of course she wanted to leave at that point. They were extremely aggressive. Yeah.
She would have been scared, obviously. President Trump, as you know, posted a video saying that it's lucky the ICE agent was alive. And I just want to be clear, the ICE agent is walking afterwards, and we know that from anything that he had in the hospital, he's fine and he's out. But President Trump posted.
Stood there.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me what you're going to say about what he did afterwards.
Oh, he just stood there. The other ICE agents surrounded him. He was obviously spooked too. I mean, they seem like children. They seem like untrained people. And so that agent was obviously spooked because he had just killed someone, and it was very obvious to everyone who had witnessed it all that she would not make it. And so they kind of gathered around him, and then there was a gold SUV that came, and they put him in it and got him out of there because everyone knew he had murdered someone.
So President Trump says the woman was disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously.
You know what? There is not a huge law enforcement presence where we are. There is a huge community presence. People are angry, Anderson. I spoke to a number of people, including a set of 3 daughters whose father had been deported to Mexico back in 2018. They described that they themselves wanted to come because they were so taken with somebody who they believed was simply trying to stand up for their own rights and did not want to navigate the system alone. Others are shouting profanities about ICE. Others are very angry about what has happened and frustrated, saying no ICE here, not in our city. Here we are a few blocks away from where George Floyd was killed. We are now about a mile or so from downtown Minneapolis. People are angry. The temperatures are frustrated. It is peaceful, and not in terms of the sound and the loudness, but they are angry and want their views to be heard. I will also note, about 10 minutes ago, there was a big tuba that was playing This Little Light of Mine, and the crowd broke out in song, familiarly speaking about and singing about that really poignant moment.
Laura Coates, thanks very much. Laura's going to be anchoring live from Minneapolis at 11 p.m. Eastern. Joining me right now is former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig, former Secret Service agent Jonathan Wackrow, and former NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism John Miller. And I want to put those videos back up because, I mean, this is what it boils down to in terms of how people see this. What do you guys see from a law enforcement perspective, particularly this video of the officer who shot? From the second vantage point that we have seen, the contact he made with the vehicle.
So in one sense, the officer places himself in front of that vehicle, which creates a situation where this is almost bound to happen. The car starts to move forward. You're going to perceive that as a threat. And the second thing you see is he opens fire. He fires, at least what we get from the audio, is 3 shots. And that is basically against DHS policy, which is policy states you're not supposed to shoot at a moving vehicle.
You're not supposed to. No.
Right. And the idea is that it is inherently dangerous and usually ineffective. The policy says if you are forced to shoot at a moving vehicle, you should also consider what happens when you shoot the driver of a vehicle that's speeding, which we see here. It goes out of control and crashes, and what is the danger to others? So one of the things there is, from a tactical standpoint, was this a smart way to operate? One of the fascinating things we learned from the Secretary of Homeland Security today was that the agent who fires the shots in June had been rammed by another vehicle, Secretary Noem claims.
But this is what she says.
That's right, and dragged for 50 yards.
I mean, there's no body camera.
We haven't isolated what incident that was or where it was, and we are aware from past descriptions of encounters with people in vehicles in ICE that they have a tendency at DHS, at least on.
You guys see from a law enforcement perspective, particularly this video of the officer who shot, from the second vantage point that we have seen, the contact he made with the vehicle.
So in one sense, the officer places himself in front of that vehicle, which creates a situation where this is almost bound to happen. The car starts to move forward. You're going to perceive that as a threat. And the second thing you see is he opens fire. He fires, at least what we get from the audio, is 3 shots. And that is basically against DHS policy, which is policy states you're not supposed to shoot at a moving vehicle.
You're not supposed to. No.
Right. And the idea is that it is inherently dangerous and usually ineffective. the policy says if you are forced to shoot at a moving vehicle, you should also consider what happens when you shoot the driver of a vehicle that's speeding, which we see here. It goes out of control and crashes, and what is the danger to others? So one of the things there is, from a tactical standpoint, was this a smart way to operate? One of the fascinating things we learned from the Secretary of Homeland Security today was that the agent who fires the shots in June had been rammed by another vehicle, Secretary Noem claims.
But this is what she says.
That's right, and dragged for 50 yards.
I mean, there's no body camera.
We haven't isolated what incident that was or where it was, and we are aware from past descriptions of encounters with people in vehicles and ICE that they have a tendency at DHS, at least on the headquarters level, to exaggerate the occurrence. So this raises a number of questions, and the investigations here are going to be, from the FBI and DHS. Was it tactically bad to create this situation? Was it within policy as a shooting for the deadly force policy? And then there's the legal part, which was it criminal?
Jonathan, I mean, again, we're playing this video because I do think this is a really crucial moment, obviously. Some people will look at this and say, well, look, she was trying to hit him. Others will say, well, look, he could have backed up 2 more steps back.
It's important to note that before he makes contact with the car, if that's what we see in this video, he's already fired.
I'm not sure when the first shot. You think that is
I've looked at it a number of times.
So he's already fired when he's made contact with the vehicle.
Yes.
It seems like he puts a hand on the vehicle.
So he puts his non-shooting hand down, and basically he bounces himself off of it. But when we look at this video, we have to look at it through 2 lenses. One is the legal lens, and Ellie and I talked about this earlier, which is this a justifiable shoot under the law? And there are certain circumstances there. And then there's the judgment call of the officer on the scene. Could he have gotten out of the way? Now, your point of he has already been struck by a vehicle in previous operations. Allegedly. Then he should know from a tactical standpoint, I am going to get off center. I am not going to be in front of this car. But Anderson, let me just give you my perspective. I have been that officer. I actually have been in the exact same situation, but I did not shoot. Early 2000s, Astoria Boulevard, outside the Neptune Diner, we were making an arrest. I found myself in that exact same position. My weapon was drawn. It was pointed at the driver. We knew that at that point in time, there were weapons in the car. And any type of furtive movement would have made me pull that trigger. The reason I didn't is because when I looked behind, there were people walking along the sidewalk. I knew that if I shot that driver, he was going to veer off most likely to the left there was a Dunkin' Donuts right across, exactly where I'm talking about. The judgment call that you have to make, that any officer or agent has to make, is milliseconds. In my case, I did not take the shot. In this case, they did. Decisions have consequences. 3 shots.
Can I just follow up with you, Jonathan? Yeah. If there were no bystanders, would you have fired that shot?
Most likely, yeah.
Okay.
But the totality of the circumstances was, and that's the way you have to look at this both from a legal standpoint and from a judgment standpoint.
I just want to play the video with sound, just to the question, John, you raised about when.
What you're about to see is disturbing. There is crude language in this. This is graphic, and we do not know the context around this. We don't know what happened before this video. Protesters are gathering at the scene at this hour. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said this about the incident a short time ago.
It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened, it was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over.
The mayor of Minneapolis is also speaking out, calling that official line from federal authorities a lie.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is.
Let's go out to the scene now. CNN's Whitney Wild has been tracking this story. Whitney, what more are officials there saying?
Well, as you heard, it was a profanity-laced press conference from Mayor Jacob Frey. Very angry. He believes that the narrative coming out from the Department of Homeland Security is simply untrue. The Department of Homeland Security said in a statement earlier that this was their narrative that they laid out, that this person had, basically was trying to block these ICE vehicles as they were conducting a targeted operation. They say that the vehicle drove toward an agent who feared for his life and feared for the life of other officers and members of the public, and discharged a firearm. They are saying that this shooting was, based on their statement, it appears they believe that this shooting was completely justified. Obviously, Mayor Jacob Frey has a completely different perspective on that. You've seen this video. We are still getting more video from people who are on the ground here.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I want to start out by addressing the loss of life that we saw here in Minneapolis today. Any loss of life is a tragedy, and I think all of us can agree that in this situation it was preventable. I've spoken to the president today on the situation here on the ground. I also just got off the phone a little while ago with Governor Walz and spoke to him as well. I want to reiterate first with all of you the facts of what happened today. At 10:25 a.m. Central Time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement were carrying out lawful operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the snow. Law enforcement were attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family. I encourage the American people at this point in time to pray for him, but also to pray for the deceased's family and her loved ones. Today alone in this country, there have been 4 different domestic terrorist attacks on federal officers by the ramming of vehicles. 3 of them happened here in Minneapolis. We've seen over 100 of these vehicle rammings happen in just recent weeks, and this must stop. ICE alone is facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them and an 8,000% increase in death threats against all of them. In fact, the very same officer who was attacked today had previously been dragged by an anti-ICE rioter who had rammed him with a car and drug him back in June. He sustained injuries at that time as well. And let me remind you why we're all here in this city today and why we've been here. In communities across this country and here in Minneapolis, we're just enforcing the laws that we have in this country. For years under President Biden, tens of millions of dangerous criminal illegal aliens, terrorists, and suspected terrorists were allowed to invade our country over our southern border. They were allowed to steal, to defraud, and to perpetuate violence against American citizens. Regardless of who your mayor or who your governor is, President Trump promised every single American that he would make America safe again. He promised every single American that he would work to protect them from dangerous criminals. Since Governor Walz has been in charge of Minnesota, we have seen homicides go up by over 50%. That's also during Mayor Frye's tenure as well. Since President Trump took office, Governor Walz has released over 470 violent criminals back onto the streets here in Minneapolis. He has another 680 of them still within his jurisdiction that he could give to us today to face the consequences for their crimes. Because Governor Walz and Mayor Frye refuse to protect Minnesotans and instead they protect these criminals, that's why we are here. And we didn't just show up yesterday, we've always been here. But we're surging operations because of the dangerous situation we see in this country and because we're no longer going to allow illegal criminals to damage and harm, to kill, to sexually abuse, to proliferate drugs, and to steal American taxpayers' dollars. This state has faced unprecedented immigration fraud. It's seen unprecedented benefit fraud. Individuals were allowed to come into this country and set up fake companies and fake nonprofits and divert billions of dollars away from American citizens and those vulnerable citizens who truly needed the services from those programs. This city has burned before, and your mayor and your governor let it happen. President Trump is not going to let that happen. He and our federal law enforcement officers are here to bring peace and to bring public safety and to ensure that criminal activity is stopped and that people who perpetuate it will face consequences. Since we have been here in recent weeks, we have arrested over 1,500 criminals off of the streets. Our law enforcement has arrested murderers, known and suspected terrorists, child pedophiles, and other brutal criminals that were protected here in this city. We should all work together to protect our citizens. We should all protect the men and the women and the families who live here in Minneapolis, who live in Minnesota, and live throughout this entire country. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for focusing on the important work that our federal officers do and make sure that we're focused on the priorities of this country, and that's making sure that we're keeping people safe. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Secretary Noem, Mayor Frye called the claims of self-defense BS. How do you respond to that?
I say that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's very clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers.
Secretary, can you expand too on the agent's injuries? The president said that he's lucky to be alive.
The officer was hit by the vehicle. She hit him. He went to the hospital. A doctor did treat him. He has been released, but he's going to spend some time with his family.
Can you clarify whether he was hit before or after the gunshots were fired?
I can't, but the FBI will continue the investigation and release more facts when it's appropriate.
Secretary Noem, has the agent been relieved of his duty, or can you give us any other insight?
No, we're following the standard protocol procedures we do in situations like this. When there's an officer-involved shooting, we make sure that we get the facts and that we are getting the statements from everybody involved and make sure that investigators are handling the decisions.
Secretary Noem, have ICE operations paused because of what happened today?
No, we're still out on the streets doing our work to get dangerous criminals off of the streets of Minneapolis.
Can you tell us any insight into your conversation with the governor?
You know, Tim and I have known each other for years. We served in Congress together. We both ran for governor the same year and have served as governor at the same times. So we were colleagues, and we discussed what happened here today. We have two very different viewpoints of it. I talked specifically about the fact that we have laws. They need to be enforced. He knows that I believe sanctuary policies have protected criminals and placed a priority of them over the citizens that live here, and he knows we'll continue to do our work, and I encouraged him to work with us. We've never had a cooperative arrangement with law enforcement here. Whenever we've done investigations, whenever we've done police work, when we've been doing what we can to bring people to justice for the crimes that they commit, we haven't had the cooperation of the state of Minnesota or the city police here under the mayor's direction. If you talk to any of these federal law enforcement officers, they'll say that when they call for backup in a situation, that it's hit and miss. They were grateful today that the police chief and local law enforcement showed up at the scene and helped secure it to make sure that nobody was harmed and that the FBI could do their work. But I would encourage them to work with us, that we could form a partnership that would make sure that individuals have the opportunity to have a safe Minneapolis.
Secretary Noem, will body
Over here.
cameras clearly stand behind the use of force, and will any of those use of force guidelines be altered or changed in the future?
You know, it's clearly established law that a vehicle driven by a person and used to harm someone is a deadly weapon. Deadly force is perfectly lawful when a threat is faced by a weapon. So I do believe that this officer used his training in this situation, and we'll let the FBI continue the investigation to get it resolved.
So just to be clear, the shooting happened before or after the vehicle hit the officer?
I know you keep asking that, but that doesn't mean that the FBI is going to give you an answer today. There will be an investigation. We want to make sure that it's factual. What I would ask is that as we go forward from here today, that we all remember that our job is to have peaceful discussions. I'd encourage our local law enforcement and state law enforcement to work with us. We are going to continue to operate here in Minneapolis and in the state of Minnesota to make sure we're going after dangerous criminals. One of the key focuses that we've had here is a focus on individuals who are sexual predators and are involved in child exploitation. When I was just here yesterday, we arrested individuals who were charged with criminal assault and sexual assault and people that exploited children. Why would you want to keep them on your streets? President Trump has promised to go after the worst of the worst, and that's exactly what we're doing in Minneapolis. By not working with us, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey are putting those criminals and prioritizing.
We are tracking the breaking news in Minnesota tonight, where an ICE officer shot and killed a 37-year-old American woman. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune identified as Renee Good. Immediately afterwards, we saw the beginnings of protests on the streets and confrontations with law enforcement that grew into a huge peaceful gathering tonight at the site of the shooting. Just a short time ago, Minneapolis Public Schools announced that school will be canceled for the rest of the week due to safety concerns around the city. First, I do want to show you a video of what happened. We still do not know exactly what occurred in the moments leading up to the shooting. And no surprise, I'm going to warn you, this is disturbing and very upsetting to watch. Here it is. You just saw the video for yourself. You just saw the video. And despite what you saw with your own eyes, I want to share what the Department of Homeland Security said in an official statement 3 hours after the shooting happened. Quote, "Today, ICE officers in Minneapolis were conducting targeted operations when rioters began blocking ICE officers, and one of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle, attempting to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them, an act of domestic terrorism. An ICE officer, fearing for his life, the lives of his fellow law enforcement, and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots." End quote. And then this evening, Homeland Security Secretary Noem said that ICE operations will continue in the city of Minneapolis. She placed blame on the woman who was killed and defended the actions of the officer involved. Watch this.
It's very clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers.
Tonight, my colleague Chris Hayes spoke to Emily Heller, who witnessed the shooting, and I want to share what she had to say about the explanation, from Noem. Watch this.
I knew after witnessing it that this would be misconstrued into self-defense, which it absolutely is not. This was totally preventable and absolutely unnecessary.
Again, that was an eyewitness. In a social media post, President Trump said he watched the video and believes that the agent fired in self-defense. Earlier today, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey pushed back on the federal government's explanation. Watch this.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed.
And this afternoon, Governor Tim Walz encouraged the government to pull its agents out of the state while showing support for the people of Minnesota.
I want Minnesotans to hear this from me. The desire to get out and protest and to speak up to this administration of how wrong this is, that is a patriotic duty at this point in time, but it needs to be done safely. I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. And so to Minnesotans, don't take the bait. Do not take the bait. Do not allow them to deploy federal troops into here. Do not allow them to invoke the Insurrection Act. Do not allow them to declare martial law.
I want to bring in MS Now reporter Alex Tabbitt. He is on the ground in Minneapolis, where a vigil is still taking place at this hour. What a day you've had. I'm so grateful that you're with us tonight. There have been peaceful protests going on throughout the afternoon and tonight. What is it like there right now? Tell us about the last 8 hours for you.
It's a somber moment here on 34th and Portland Avenue, where this tragedy transpired about 12 hours ago. As you can see, people are still laying flowers down in commemoration of the 37-year-old Renee Good, as identified by the Minnesota Star Tribune. And this is the exact place where this tragedy happened. I want to give you a little bit of a TikTok of the day. At around 9:30 a.m., according to Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good. At around 9:50 a.m., I received a text message from what's known as an ICE observer. Those are community members who patrol the streets, letting other community members know that ICE, that immigration, that Border Patrol is on the scene to keep people safe from racial profiling, safe from detention. And that text message said that somebody had been shot and killed. So we arrived on the scene, and I saw a gruesome image that will stay with me, Steph, for the rest of my life. I saw the car where Renee Good was sitting, the airbag exploded, and blood splattered everywhere. This entire area where we're at right now had been fenced off by state and local law enforcement, and inside we saw ICE agents, we saw Border Patrol agents, we saw Greg Bovino, and we saw tensions flare up between the protesters who arrived on the scene and those Border Patrol agents. Those tensions hit a boiling point. Tear gas went into the crowd. We saw protesters crying, hit the ground, hit the snow. I picked up one of the canisters. You can read it right here. Muzzle blast CS 400 millimeter powder dispenser round as those tensions flared. But then what we saw in the hours after, once those Border Patrol agents left the scene, we saw something beautiful. We saw community members rally together, light candles, say prayers, sing songs, and band together in this very, very difficult moment. This very difficult moment that happened less than half a mile away from where George Floyd was murdered. Now, even though it's been more than 12 hours since this transpired, you still have community members here protesting, chanting, but as you can see, it has been nothing but peaceful. It has been nothing but the community holding each other arm in arm as they try to get through this difficult moment. Steph?
Are people worried about growing anger in the city? What could we expect in the days to come? As you said, it is a beautiful community. It's peaceful throughout the night, but what are we in for in the next few days? As we heard, ICE isn't going anywhere.
I cannot definitively answer that question for you, Steph. I will say that I have not left this protest since I arrived here on the scene at around 10 a.m. this morning. And except for very, very rare instances of what look like outside agitators causing a ruckus, it has been, by and large, incredibly peaceful. So I can't tell you what the next couple of days have in store. I can tell you that this community is on edge, has been on edge for more than a month now. Even before this immigration raid, when President Trump called the Somali diaspora here some 81,000 strong garbage, this community has been on edge. But I can't tell you definitively what's going to happen in the next couple of days, Steph.
Well, I am going to tell you definitively that we're grateful that you stayed out there with us tonight. We're grateful to have you. Please head to your hotel, take a hot shower, and head to bed. This has been such a day for you, and we're really grateful to have your live reporting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steph.
Now I want to bring in Rob D'Amico. He's a former FBI supervisor and MS Now national security and intelligence analyst. Tom Manger, former U.S. Capitol Police chief and MS Now law enforcement analyst, and former ICE activist.
Growing protests tonight in Minneapolis. An ICE agent shot a woman there, witnesses say, in the face as she was in her car. She is dead. He killed her. And you are looking at live pictures right now of the streets in Minneapolis. You can see all of those lights. This is a vigil near the site where the shooting took place. Crowds have been growing all night. They are chanting, "Say her name." And we have just learned the victim's name. She is a 37-year-old woman, as we said, and her name is Renee Nicole Good. Renee Nicole Good. She was shot and killed today. And ICE claims that the agent opened fire after Good, quote, weaponized her vehicle in an attempt to kill him, a federal officer. All right, well, there's a lot of video out there, so let's just show you some of it. Here's the video so you can see what actually happened for yourself. We warn you, it is graphic. Renee was killed, but you see agents approaching the SUV, which is stopped in the middle of the street. They instruct her to get out of the car. Now, according to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, then an agent tries to pull the door handle. You can see that part. The driver then puts the car in reverse, which is crucial, and then sort of changing direction is almost to go around. She moves forward again. And that's when the vehicle bumps the ICE agent, who draws his weapon and fires it 3 times. Now, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem calls this an act of domestic terrorism. She says there were 3 others of those today. And President Trump says, claims online that Good violently, willfully, and viciously, this is a quote from him, ran over the ICE officer, adding that it is hard to believe he is alive. All right, now President Trump puts out his own angle of the video to make that point. Let's just show you what he put out there. This is what he's putting out to show the ICE agent's life in danger. You can see, we'll go back and show that to you, that that he was bumped by the vehicle. We have video from the moments after the shooting where you do see the agent adjusting his mask as he walks away from the vehicle. So that you can see that there. President Trump says that he was injured and is in the hospital. We have learned that he's been released, which is consistent with him walking away there, adjusting his mask. Now, the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey had this to say about Trump and his administration's account of what happened.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit.
Frey also did not mince words when he delivered a message to ICE.
I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
Now, what happened today is something that Frey spoke about and warned about last night here on the show when he talked about the 2,000 federal agents who were deployed to a city and what ICE said was going to be the largest deployment ever. Here's what Frey said.
This is not about preventing fraud. This is about sowing chaos on the streets of Minneapolis, and that's what they are intent on doing right now.
In a moment, we are going to be joined by a woman who lives on the street where the shooting happened. She was recording as she was pleading with agents to let a doctor check on Renee Good, who was shot.
We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relax? You just killed my
neighbor. You caught butter in the face. You killed my neighbor.
All right, we're going to speak to the woman you heard her voice there, the eyewitness, in just a moment. First, I want to go to the ground and Whitney Wild, who is there in Minneapolis tonight. And Whitney, the crowd is growing where you are. What are you seeing? What is the tone right now?
The tone right now is resilience. It is a chance to pay their respects to a woman they did not know who lost her life yards from right where I'm standing. It was right on this block where, as you see in the video, she pulls out and the ICE officer discharges his firearm into the driver's side of the vehicle, and then she careens to the left side of the street and crashes her car. Just yards behind me is exactly where that happened, Aaron. When we walked up there earlier, and you can't see it right now, but there was a growing vigil there. Flowers laid right at the place where she spent her last moments on Earth. It was so striking, Aaron, because it was the first time that the public was getting a chance to actually see it, because this was minutes after the Minneapolis Police Department cleared out. The scene had been processed, and so they left. And the scene was still so fresh that there was blood on the ground. Flowers were surrounding the blood from people who had come to pay their respects to her. And there were fragments of brake light, it looked like, broken among the flowers. It was, like I said, it was incredibly striking. Right now, what you're hearing is chanting. We are hearing over and over this crowd chant her name. We're hearing people speak to the crowd on a bullhorn. This is right now a moment of reflection and a moment of protest. This has turned into a candlelight vigil here, Aaron. I think it is important to remember that we are 4 blocks from where George Floyd was killed. This is Portland Avenue. I'm standing right on Portland Avenue, and East 34th Street is just behind me. And this is a city that's worked really hard to rebuild in the aftermath of that. And multiple people I spoke with today brought up that this is in the aftermath of the George Floyd riots, and that the Minneapolis police have tried to rebuild after that. And what was striking out here earlier, Aaron, was the crowd was so angry, and most of that anger was directed at the Minneapolis Police Department, who had nothing to do with this shooting, but quickly became the target of furor from people who live here and work here, and for many people who saw it, Aaron.
All right, Whitney, thank you very much at that vigil. And as Whitney's talking about, that anger initially that was directed at the Minneapolis Police Department, which of course was not involved with the shooting. Let's go now to the Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara. And Chief, I appreciate your time. In the context of what Whitney said, how worried are you about lashback, about this anger, about anything getting out of hand or violence in Minneapolis tonight?
Well, I've been very concerned for several weeks, and I've been quite vocal about it. I have been worried, not that federal law enforcement activity was happening, but how that enforcement was taking place in the city. And I have specifically said, I've been worried we would have a tragedy in our community. And I would hope that everyone, regardless of their viewpoint, can acknowledge that the loss of a woman's life is tragic. And along with that, things in this city have been very tense for several weeks, and it is a very emotional situation, and it's very divisive and politically charged. So that is why I have been asking all of our elected officials to please ask for peace and ask for calm. And as you mentioned, our police officers responded immediately. I responded immediately to the scene once I heard there was a report of a shooting. But unfortunately, as our officers were trying to leave today and trying to keep the peace, to preserve the crime scene so that there can be an investigation, so that there can be some level of, a finding related to what actually happened, our men and women